If you or someone you know has diabetes, you may have built up an extra supply of test strips and lancets. That's where we come in. We'll buy the supplies that you don't need and resell them to those in need to prevent waste. Help us make diabetes management more affordable. Visit us at teststripswithaz.com.
All right, we have Brianna Van Buren joining the program, coming off her very successful UFC debut over Livia Renata Souza last weekend at UFC Sacramento. Happy to be joined by the Bull right now. How are you, Brianna?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. So we had to push this thing back a couple of hours because you got a nice little loud, somewhat friendly knock on the door this morning. Tell the folks what happened.
Banging on my door, here to test me, and it's safe to say they are worse than the cops.
Was that the first time they've come a knocking?
No, they came actually before I fought Livia Renata Souza. Before the fight, they came and just did what it's called out of camp testing. So, and then they tested me. They did a random drug test the day of the fight. Also, they followed me around. USADA was there, and they tested me. So, they're actually doing a very great job with their with testing us.
So in terms of your fighting career, we're a little less than 9 days removed from the big win. You went in there, you had a hell of a performance, you took on a very tough opponent, and you got the win. So 9 days later, how does it all feel?
It feels good. I'm excited for the near future and for what things can happen. In the near future. I'm looking forward to everything else. I'm past the whole what just happened in Sacramento, but it felt good to get the win.
I know you said after the fight, when you were speaking with the media, that you were okay with the performance, but you had to go back and watch the tape to see how it really played out. So after going back and watching it, were you still happy with it, especially since you fighters are your own worst critics by far?
Yeah. To be honest with you, I'm very hard on myself, and I know my coaches and my support system are probably going to give me crap while they listen to this, but I am still kind of hard on myself. I really do wish I would have got the finish. Again, I'm not overlooking Livia. I knew that she was a tough opponent, but I really felt like there were some areas where I could have got the finish and just little things that I could have done. But the good thing is I'm back in the gym, and I'm learning and growing, and hopefully the next fight I can get that finish. I'm always looking for that finish, regardless, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I think throughout the fight, especially if you jump on the MMA Twitterverse as these fights are going on, a lot of people were very impressed by your performance. You opened up a lot of eyes, and Livia obviously brought a strong resume into that fight. Did you feel like at any point in that fight you were in any danger at all throughout that contest?
Not at all. To be honest with you, I didn't feel like I was in danger at all. There were a couple of times where I felt like, she was getting a little bit desperate, and just kind of throwing, she was throwing some good overhands and whatnot. Things that she were throwing, like if I were probably in range and in her range, she probably could have caught me pretty good. But again, it's a fight. Anything could have happened. But I came out the better person that night. And, thankfully to my coaches and my teammates, they helped me prepare for that. I was prepared, to fight her. So I wasn't surprised.
It's kind of a rite of passage when someone joins the show for the first time, because I love these stories. I love the journey that you fighters go through to get to these points. And I know you're a wrestler. You wrestled for Gilroy, one of the best wrestling schools in the country. That's the team that Daniel Cormier coaches now. But in terms of your martial arts journey, your MMA career, how did this all begin for you? What made you say, you know what, I'm going to be a fighter. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. So I had my uncle, who you saw in the video earlier when you had called me. He was actually a professional mixed martial artist. He fought for Strikeforce. So he's been around the game for a while. I basically started with him. I first started, I wanted to be a boxer. I had no intentions to want to do kickboxing tournaments or anything like that. And then Anthony kind of just, from training with him, we kind of maneuvered our way into kickboxing. He convinced me to do a kickboxing tournament. And, from then on, I kind of just fell in love with the art and, kind of never looked back ever since. So I started off as wanting to just do boxing, but then ended up doing some kickboxing tournaments and then fell in love with it.
I know going through some of your pages like Sherdog and Topology that said that your first amateur fight took place back in 2010. So doing the math in my head, you were what, 16, 17 years old for that first fight?
Yeah, I was 15 years old when I took my first amateur, I believe, my amateur fight. And then 15 turning 16, I believe. And then I was doing some jiu-jitsu tournaments, wrestling tournaments back then. Thankfully, my coach, Anthony, his mentality is you wrestle with wrestlers, you grapple with grapplers, you kickbox with kickboxers, you box with boxers. And that has kind of stuck with me all throughout my whole entire journey. So when I first started this art, it was like, I'm going to get better, not at just one thing. I'm going to get better at everything. And, that is still the plan.
Do you remember that first fight? You got the win, but do you remember like specific moments in that fight, things you took away from it? Like, what was that first fight like as a 15 going on 16-year-old competing in a cage like that?
Yeah. So I remember when I first took that fight, I was nervous because at the time the girl was supposed to be like, she was like really good. Everybody was talking about her, super aggressive and, just really good fighter. And me coming in like, what the heck? What am I doing? What am I getting myself into? Like, are you sure I can do this? My coaches are just like, we believe in you. You can do it. You're going to win and all this and that. But, going in, you're like, this chick is good too, and everybody's hyping her up and, and I remember when I did that fight, it was with Delicia, I believe her name was. And in that fight, I was super nervous. After the fight, I was like, what the heck? Like, this is awesome. Like, I want to do this again. It was like an addiction. And ever since then on, like, even when I'm fighting still to this day, I'm like, man, I can't wait for the next one. It's an addiction. And, I fell in love with this addiction.
How did the other kids in school, friends, I mean, I know your uncle's been in the sport for a while, the rest of your family, how did they react to you taking a fight at 15, 16 years old and starting this journey into mixed martial arts?
So I come from a fighting family. My grandfather was actually Golden Gloves champion. He was a boxer. And then my uncle was also a Golden Gloves champion. He started off as boxing and then maneuvered his way into, kickboxing and then started doing MMA fights. My friends were very supportive. They thought the idea was cool, but they didn't. I think even still to this day, they're like, "Holy shit! Like you're doing it. You're in the UFC. Like what the heck? Like you're working your butt off." Like even when I was in high school, I had the goal to. I wanted to graduate early just so that way I could pursue my career. And I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I remember my wrestling coaches at the time were like, you can get a full ride to, San Francisco State or, wherever, all these colleges around, like we can get you a scholarship for your wrestling and whatnot. And, I kind of just stuck with the plan. I talked to my uncle and I was like, I just want to fight. I want to do everything that's going to help me become the world champion. And, I want to do wrestling. I want to wrestle, but I don't want to take away from kickboxing. So what is it that I need to do to, stay consistent? And, my uncle, I lived with him at the time also. So, it was fairly easy for me to stay on track. Because I had that support system and he was just like, okay, you're doing it. This is what you want to do. We're committed to it. Let's do it. My friends were still there at the end of the day. They supported it. I think in the beginning they were just like, what the heck? Like, that's a little odd. Like, you should just go and wrestle. Or, you know, I played soccer also in high school and in middle school. So, you know, a lot of my friends were like, you know, you can become a professional soccer player. And I was just like, nah, I want to punch people in the face for a living.
So you come from a generational lineage of fighters. So you just felt like, let's continue this track and kind of let's add to that generational, you know, emphasis on fighting. And now look at you. I mean, you're in this spot and you just made your UFC debut. And right before that, you fought for Invicta. You captured the strawweight title in that one-night tournament. 3 fights, 3 wins, couple of finishes to boot, and you submitted a UFC veteran in the finals to capture the title. So talk about that experience of going through that tournament and sort of turning back the clock to the way things were in MMA, like how the UFC put on their events back in the 90s and did one-night tournaments when you were just a baby bull at the time.
Yeah. Oh, man, it was wild. To be quite honest with you, I was nervous, obviously. The nerves are there no matter what in this fight game. It's a weird situation and it's a weird feeling because it's like a roller coaster. It's like they're there no matter what, you know what I mean? And so fighting in that one-night tournament, I think it was awesome. It was cool. I gained a lot of, you know, I got a lot of growth out of it. I gained a couple of friendships out of it. And most importantly, you know, I became a better martial artist that night. And, you know, that fighting three times in one night, it's wild because it's like you go out there the first fight and it's like, okay, you win the first one, but I'm not going to celebrate. You know, for me, my mentality was like, I'm not celebrating too early. I got two more other girls in front of me who want it just as bad as I do. So I need to go out there and get the job done. Second fight, it was like, okay, cool, I won the second one, but okay, I got one more. Like, how bad do you want it? And my nerves were like up and down. Like, it was like an adrenaline dump in between, you know, the matches. And then after the fight was over, after I fought Kaylin Cran, it was just like, wow, like we did it. We fought smart. It was all about going in there and fighting smart. There were a couple of times where it was like, okay, you know, I want to just stand and make this like, you know, make this a war and, you know, do this and do that. But it was like, you know, you got to fight smart. You got to be mentally in it, physically in it. And, you know, just all I had to do was just prepare myself as much as I could for that tournament. And my coaches definitely did a great job at, you know, doing that. We literally worked on everything. It wasn't just like, okay, we're going to go in there and just take this person down. It was like, no, we better be prepared for stand up. We better be prepared for the wrestling, the grappling. You know, I went with high level girls. Juliana Lima, I believe she was a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. You know, I'm a brown belt in jiu-jitsu as well, but it was just, you know, how was I going to test myself against going with, you know what I mean, somebody at that level as well. And then, you know, Kaylin Cran, she's a scrapper. She likes, you know, she had really good hands. And so it was like, I had to be prepared for that. And not only that, my original opponent that I had in the first match, she didn't make weight. So then they pulled someone in that I had no idea that she was going to even be in the tournament, you know? And so it was like, how do you prepare for that? And it was just like, you don't. You prepared to be the best version of yourself and just hope that, you know, you show up that night. And thankfully I showed up on May 3rd.
I feel like with the way you present yourself, this air of confidence that you have, you're humble as well. Like, it's not cockiness. It's just confidence in your skills and your team. You probably felt like you were ready for the UFC even before that tournament, but did that night just solidify things for you? Like, were you confident that your next fight following that tournament, capturing that belt, would be fighting for the UFC?
Yeah. To be quite honest with you, I tried not to focus so much on that. I knew that my support system and, you know, people were like, you know, no matter what, the call was going to be there. And I knew they were going to come knocking no matter what, whether it was, you know, right after this tournament or, you know, if I had to take a couple of more fights. I knew that they were interested just because when I fought Amy Montenegro a couple of years back, they were already, you know, reaching out to my coaches and telling them like, wow, you know, she put on a great performance and whatnot. But, you know, it was all just a matter of time. And, you know, it happened to be right after that night. they ended up contacting my coaches and my manager. So I knew it was going to happen. It was just a matter of time.
What was your biggest takeaway from your UFC debut? Was it the walk to the cage? Was it getting your hand raised in the cage after the fight was over? Like, what was your biggest takeaway from that awesome night in Sacramento, making your debut and getting a win like that?
Oh, man. I would honestly say, obviously getting my hand raised is probably the best, the best takeaway yet. But also just everything leading up to it. I had the camp was crazy. Like I was going through so much stuff in my camp, and I never really realized, like, this camp had showed me a lot. Like my past camps, I'm always like, man, I'm always going through stuff, but I would rather have my past camps than the camp that I just had previously, because I was sick. I actually had a really bad cold. I was sick. I was out for a week. And then I actually was coming off of, a couple of injuries and just little things. Like, I was sick, and, and I just had to battle through. So the whole camp was amazing. I was able to hit growth in a different area, and to also prove to myself that I can do anything that I want to do, as long as I set my mind to it, as long as I'm mentally, physically in it. And I told myself in the beginning of this camp, when I signed the contract with the UFC, I said, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to commit to it. I don't care if I break a leg. I'm staying committed to it all the way through. And that I have to say was amazing. And then the whole fight week, that was pretty cool. I enjoyed everything, just taking it all in. Everything was awesome, and I was grateful for it.
Now that you have that elusive first UFC win out of the way, you have your eyes on that San Francisco card in October. And the way the UFC builds these cards, I have a hard time believing that you won't be on there, considering that you live in the area. You live not too far from there, like 90 minutes away or so, I thought you said. So do you feel confident, based on history and based on what we've seen with the UFC, with providing a platform for local fighters to be on their card, do you feel like your next fight will be on that San Francisco card? Has there been any communication about that over the last 9 days or so?
Right. To be quite honest with you, I don't really know. Like, I don't have, I'm still a new person coming into, to this job. This is my new job with the UFC. So I don't really know, Sean Shelby, Mick Maynard, Dana White. I don't have a personal relationship with them. So I don't know, from talking to Sean Shelby after the fight, sounds good. But, you know what I mean? I don't have that relationship to know that, okay, I'm confident to say I'm on the next card, because I don't know if he's just if he just kind of tells everybody, it sounds good, we'll get you on the card, or if he's actually saying he genuinely means to me, it'd be foolish if we didn't get you on the card, right? So we're going to do whatever we can to get you on the card. So I don't really know. I don't have that relationship with them yet. But again, it would be foolish. I live 90 minutes away from the Chase Center, so it would make sense to get me on the card. But again, it's all in their hands and what they want. And for me, again, I'm not worried about it. If they don't get me on this card, I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to be I'm not going to have a sour face about it. There's going to be I have a contract. I have a 4-5 contract deal with them. So it's like, I'm gonna end up fighting for them again. They can't hide me.
After the win, you spoke pretty candidly in the cage. You shouted out to the rafters. You wanted a top 10 fighter. You had the attention of a lot of members of the MMA media after you had your post-fight interview. And then you spoke to the media afterwards, and you said essentially the same thing, but you also said, you know what, I'm not picky. I'm down for whatever. Another thing I noticed is when you were asked, who would you want? You're like, whatever. But you had this hesitation towards you that you did have a name in mind for your next fight, but you would save it for another day. So what better day than today, right, Brianna? We're here on FloCombat. Who is it? Yeah. Who are you thinking about?
Honestly, there are a handful of girls, but I know that there are a couple of girls that are injured. I know that some girls are already set to fight, or they have, they already kind of have set dates to fight. That's why I had mentioned at this point, I'm not picky. I would take whoever, but I know that there are a couple of girls that are, are injured or pulling the sideline. So at this point, I'll take anybody. I'm not one to disrespect anyone, or, I would like to fight. There's a girl, we were just looking at her. I can't even remember her name. I think her last name's Casey. Courtney Casey. I think she'd be a good fight. But again, I think she's injured. I'm not too sure. So I don't want to call, I don't want to sound like like I'm calling someone out because they're injured. I'm pretty sure she's injured, but she'd be a good fight. There are a bunch of girls. I'm willing to fight anyone. I'm someone who doesn't turn down fights, but at the same time, I got to be careful what I wish for. So, again, I'm willing to fight whoever, though. Whoever wants to fight in San Francisco. And, I really hope that Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard really do think of me, and they're like, you know what, we can get her on that card. I'm just trying to be the best in what I do. I'm not trying to, disrespect anybody. I'm aiming for number one. And so whatever I have to do to get that spot, I want to fight whoever's gonna take me there.
You're part of one of the funnest divisions in the sport, no doubt about it. I say this all the time. The strawweight division will never let you down. It never lets you down. And there's a lot of fun fights in store for you. It doesn't matter who it is. It's going to be a fun fight. How close do you, because you mentioned how much you want to be number one, and you're still humble in nature, and, be careful what you wish for and things like that. But how close do you think you are at this point to getting in there with the Michelle Wattersons, the Joannas, the Roses, the Tatiana Suarez's, even the Jessica Andrades of the world? Like, in your mind, how close are you to being able to look at those types of matchups?
I don't think I'm too far. To be quite honest with you, this division is so, it's such an exciting division, but it's also such a competitive division too. So I think anything could happen, I really do think anything could happen at this point. I'm down to scrap whoever. I'm going to be ready to fight whoever, whether they give me, I don't think they would give me Michelle Watterson, one, because, I don't even think I'm ranked right now. And, I think some of these girls they're all trying to climb to the top as fast as they could. So they don't want to fight me. I think a lot of them feel like, that I just put on a stand-up performance, just last weekend. And, I think some of these girls are like, we don't want to fight her. Well, let's fight somebody else. Let's go a different route. And that's honestly what I do believe, and what I think. So, I think the higher ranked fighters, they have a little bit more pull and they can call a little bit. But at this point, I'll be ready for whoever Sean Shelby gives me. I don't care at this point. I just want to fight, I just want to live my dream. This is what I'm destined to do. I can't do this for the rest of my life. So I just want to fight. I want to punch people in the face.
Brianna Van Buren joining the program, coming off her big win at UFC Sacramento 9 days ago. Brianna, before we let you go, let the folks know where they can follow along with you on this journey via the world of social media. Any shout-outs, anything else you want to get off your chest, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time to put this interview together. I know that we had fallen through a couple of times, and I'm just, grateful that you followed up and, you understood my busy schedule with training and, life and whatnot. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Huge thank you to my coaches and teammates. They have done a lot. They're doing a lot. This is not an easy job. It's not easy for them. They bust their butts every single day just to make sure that, I'm getting the work in, and I'm taking that next step to become the world champion. And then huge thank you to, my family, my support system, everybody back at home, my hometown, Gilroy, California, everybody at, Ant Dogs MMA and American Kickboxing Academy. They're really doing a lot for me and, for us as a team. And so I'm just very appreciative of that. And, all of my followers, fans, friends, you can follow me on Instagram at Brianna the Bull.